creative nothingness.
My name is Christopher Albright. This is Panel by Panel, a show in which we read your favorite comic books. And today with me is the man who taught me everything I know in lettering, Mr. SK. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, good. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited about this. See, I've watched you create these comics. The title of the comic today, is it Wordsmith?
Wordsmith, yep.
Wordsmith. I've seen them come out, and I'm like, this is incredible. And you do comic cons at libraries and things like that. Just amazing stuff. One of the most prolific like Australian creators. Is that right?
I do a little bit. I get by.
Most prolific, most known man in comics. This is SK. I love him. Um, Anything you want to say about this book before we start digging into it?
Oh no, I love it. And one of the things which I love about Wordsmith, it's really all about words. And before we get too much into it, it's just really about what the same word can mean to different people. That's the entire crux of every story. It's like there's a word, and that's how different people see that word. And I love it. I just love that idea behind it.
I love that too. The one thing that is going to be hard for us is actually reading the book along. It's kind of hard with how the video is. So I'm going to trust you to point out all the high points for us, and we're going to try to get this going. Ready to go?
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right. So first, we always talk about the cover itself. How much input do you have when making these covers?
Quite a bit actually, and I actually like I like doing putting the instruction for the variant covers out a lot more. The one thing about Wordsmith is there is a huge cast of characters, and I've always wanted that way. I wanted it to be an expanding cast where people come in, people come out. So most of the Wordsmith covers, and if you ever go back to see the previous volumes, it's basically a cast of thousands. So it's a very Star Warish, also very MCU-ish, where they have the lead character in the head and all the other side characters all to the side. You see them in all the Avenger movies, for example. But the variant cover I usually have a lot more fun with, because I can actually because when you have a big cast and you want to put everybody in, the poses are, I have to admit, a little bit stiff. You know, you can't have that as exciting because you kind of jam as many things as you can in. But when you don't have to do it, oh gosh, you can experiment with poses and stuff. That's why I have way more fun giving direction for variant covers than I have for the main cover, because the main cover is, we need to put all these characters in here. So what can they be doing?
So the cover itself, the art that you have for this book, for me, when I look at it, it feels like something I would pick up at a school fair. It feels like a scholastic book that like all kids have read. Was that a decision that you made, or how did we get to this?
So the artist, Pierre Daedalus, actually has a book published by Scholastic. So
Okay.
Scholastic is not one company per se. So Scholastic has different markets and all the rest of it. And each one, they work dependently and independently of each other, if you can think about it. But there's a market for, it's like McDonald's, where you have McDonald's head office, but in each different geography, you have different McDonald's products. You have your Big Mac all around the world, but if you came to Australia, for example, there's an Angus burger, you know, that type of thing, which may or may not be in the US. In China, they sell porridge, you know, that type of thing. So Pierre Daedalus actually sold through Scholastic New Zealand. So he got a book published. Shout out to Mark Abnett, who's the writer for it's called This Land. And yeah, so his style really fits the Scholastic style already, because he's a published Scholastic author, so illustrator, sorry. So yeah, 100%, and I love it. There's a cartoon series called Winx, and it's very, very similar. But I love it. I've been working with him for close to how many years now? 10, 15 years, I think.
That's insane.
On different titles. And so, yeah, he's an absolutely fantastic guy.
That's insane. When you said winks, I was like, oh, I know this now. As soon as you said, it, I was like,
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. To ask two more questions about the
yeah.
cover itself. The book that we're going to read, what issue is this in the series?
5.
Number 5. And additionally, is it meant for all ages or is there an age limit that you look for?
Look, it's all ages, and the way I like to write all ages types books is, and it's I don't, and you find there are some writers when they write for all ages, they write it a little, and this is probably not the right word. I'm going to say it anyway. They write it very patronizingly, if you
Okay.
will. So they write down to the audience, which I absolutely hate. I when I write to all ages, I what I do is I keep certain themes and certain things to their level. I never write down to them. I just pick themes that are more suitable. Like you can't write an all ages type book where you're talking about working with a boss, for example. Like kids can't relate to that, like that to that level. But you can, but you don't dumb down relationships because kids can understand that. So your all ages, I always think is as a personal thing is you're picking the right themes and storylines. You're not trying to dilute the complexity. As soon as you try to dilute complexity, it's like, you know what, make it complex, make it that the kids will get it on the second reread and type like that. But
That is
also, yeah.
fantastic. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh, and sorry, and the other thing which, and as we go through this, which I absolutely love, is when a lot of people write to all ages kids, they over explain. And I know I do it a lot as well. In my own personal life, they will actually write the words, I am sad, I am happy. And you're just going, make them be sad or unhappy or happy or whatever it is. You don't have to spell out everything that happens. And it's even for a lot of books right now, they actually say, I am reaching for the cup of water. It's like, just reach for it. Don't say you're doing something. Actually do it. And a lot of conversation. And you, when we get to this, you'll see a one page which I do want to highlight, where the dialogue tells you, if you just read the dialogue as it is, it tells you nothing that's happening. But if you read the dialogue in the context, it tells you a different story. And we'll get to that page when we get to it. But you see it.
I'm excited. Fantastic answers all around. That's something I've always wondered about when writing for kids is, does it have to be dumbed down? Do I have to patronize? Like you said, patronize, not the right word, but still, do I talk like that? And to say no, just be on their level and make it complex still is a great answer. It's something I've never even considered. Um, we're going to go ahead. We're going to move on to our very first page. We have the prologue 1 year ago. This is the prologue section. Why open the book with the prologue? What importance was that for you?
Okay, so you can read it without. Um, you can read each volume without reading previous volumes. That's what I
Mhm.
like. I try to do that. But I also do it that if you've read all the previous volumes, you get a little bit extra.
Okay.
So the reason this happens is why I say 1 year ago is this all happens prior to volume 1. So you actually see how the backstory of one of the main characters, Celia, that little girl behind there, and you'll
Mhm.
see how she meets up with the protagonist. And it also gives a little bit of background, and it just leads into the main story as well.
Okay. Okay.
So
Um, so here we have Celia. Anything else that's happening on this page? Are these main characters we're going to see in the future?
oh no, so the little girl, yes, and the other characters they'll pop in once in a while. The
Okay.
other thing I like to do is if you ever watch Supernatural, is no minor character gets forgotten, and I always bring back minor characters. Remember when this happened a couple of seasons ago? I love that it rewards people who have kept up with the series. But if you haven't, it doesn't matter. It will just be, oh, who's this new character? But I love it that I can link things in the. So the lady on the right in
Mhm.
the lighter pink, she doesn't reappear later in the series in this particular volume as well.
Okay. This is the first book I've had that is going to have a large cast. So it's going to be a lot of fun to try and dissect and ask you questions about why we're doing these scenes and what we're pushing towards. But here are our next two pages. go ahead and tell me what the conversation is being had with Miss Celia and who is talking to her.
Yeah. So she's one of the girls from the orphanage. So
Hmm.
this was actually, if you read through here, a lot of it is like, for example, Celia in here doesn't have to say the words I am upset or I am sad. Um, what if you read through the context behind it is, if you read thing, it's she's trying to hold it together, and I didn't, and this is where I would say good dialogue actually is really important because she's answering as abruptly as she can. There's a lot of ellipses. She's pausing, and if you read through all the context behind it, is you find out it's a little bit expositional where you're finding out little bits of the story,
Hmm.
but it really doesn't matter. It's just like, yeah, you kind of feel that they're just going through the routine, like okay, you come and join the orphanage, you need to tick A B C D box, we can ask you these questions, but it just feels like it's all irrelevant, like a heads down, in that
Hmm.
page. And the other thing, why you have such a big window and how the page is set up, it makes Celia, although she's in the center of the page, from a from the viewer standpoint, she's very small on the page, and it feels like the world is a lot bigger, and she's just this tiny. Like, for example, the other way you could do this pages, and I see a lot of people, they hate splash pages where like this, and I totally disagree with it, because when you do a giant splash page like this, a lot of people, oh, it has to be an action sequence, it has to show something epic. Not really. Sometimes it can show the reverse. Have the really big splash page can show the character is very, very small, both physically and metaphorically. You can kind of see she's slumped over, and she is so small in the whole panel. And the giant window behind her is just that big giveaway that she is very tiny and very lost. Again, without actually having to say anything, it's just how you set the page up. And a lot of it comes out that way. So that's why I think I disagree with a lot of what people say in terms of splash panels have to be epic action. No, they don't. They can be very, very sad, and they can be make the characters look very, very small.
Listen, I
That's
love
kind of
hot
what I wanted
takes.
that. That's kind of what I wanted that page to do.
Yeah, no, I love hot takes. And I especially love when someone comes on and says, "I don't care about the action. This is important. This specific scene is important, even though there's not action in it. I wanted the splash page for. I disagree. Fantastic. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here to learn." Um, the page itself, you pointed out how small she was. You pointed out the window behind her, and it all clicked for me. I said, "Oh, I do feel that just by looking at the page. I feel this is a very small character," and you can look at both pages and understand what's happening without having to read, which is another key point to a good comic is you shouldn't have to read. You should be able to look at those panels and go, "Oh, I get it. I know what's happening and I can follow pretty easily." Um, when it comes to your lettering, we're going to ask a few more questions about that as we move on. The specific one, I don't see any good questions to ask you for it yet.
It's
Um,
very standard. It's just
yeah, this
the
one's
top
standard,
left,
but
bottom right. Yep.
I know we're gonna get to something.
Yep.
Is there anything else on these 2 pages you'd like to point out?
No, it's just the sadness. You kind of
It
see
is
it, and
sad.
when you go into the last panel of that dorm room,
Mhm,
it's purposely dark. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's purposely dark. There's purposely no windows there. Now, these people running the orphanage, they're not bad people, but it's just that claustrophobic feel that,
mhm,
it's that she's going to something that's sad. And it emphasizes all of that, even without reading a panel. And if you notice, the first panel of the page on the right, there's still
mhm.
the window there. And then there's no more windows. It just gets darker and darker and
Darker and
darker until
darker.
the last panel. So it's
Absolutely.
it just shows the progression. That's the one thing I love with the medium. You don't have to beat people over the head with it. You don't have to show her, tears keep coming from one panel to another panel. You don't have to. You let the environment do it for you a little bit. So
I was gonna say, this is environmental storytelling all the way. Um, we move on to another scene now. We've completely changed to a different location already. Those 2 scenes were
yep,
contained from what I could understand, and then you've
yep.
moved the story along. Here's 2 new scenes. What's happening here?
So this one, and what I find is sometimes a lot of training montage sequences and stuff, they're not telling the story really well. In this one, I was a bit cheeky. So this is a time montage as well. So I've actually accelerated time. You know, in the beginning, it's 1 year ago. The
Mhm.
top scene is autumn. You know, it's the fall colors, the orange, the browns, you know, and then it moves into winter. So it kind of implies we've moving past at least 6 months. It's already all implied through. And it shows that she's in this particular orphanage. There are two people who have been bullying her, and she's more or less been putting up with it. And then in the final panel, it's like, I'm not going to take it anymore. You know, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of being picked on, my lunch being stolen, you know, and all the rest of it. So it's kind of, and the final thing is like, no, that's not going to happen anymore. So you can kind of see, and this is where I really enjoy colors as well. The colors work. It's the final panel, especially. It's like two different panels, but it's one. There's almost total darkness in one, and
Mhm.
total light in the other. So it's like a tipping point. It's like so from a visual standpoint, you see a tipping point going, what do I do? Where am I at? And what decision I'm going to make? And it's purposely she's sitting in the side of the light because she's decided to take action. She's decided, no more, I'm standing up. Where if she was in the dark, it's like, oh no, woe is me. This is my life. I'm so sad. But she's sitting in the other part because she's saying, you know what? I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to step up. And it's just in the palette of the colors. So
Absolutely.
it's a lot of things you can do with panels and visuals without having to be let the panels talk to the reader so that they don't have to read the dialogue. They know for the last panel, a decision is being made. So
Yes.
if you want a standard point, it's the catalyst point where the bit of story theory going one step back is really uninteresting storytelling is where a hero is put into a position where they just go with the flow. Um, I'll use one example, it's a little bit hot take example. Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Okay.
Rey. Rey never makes a decision to do something. She doesn't. It's the most infuriating part of me when you see as a writer. They say she gets chased by stormtroopers. She meets Finn, and they escape on the Millennium Falcon. So she doesn't actually make a decision because she's being chased. She has to run away. You know what I mean? And so she joins the Jedi Order. You know, she meets up with Han and all the rest of it. But she actually never makes a decision. She just kind of just gets pushed into it, and she just goes with the flow, and it all happens. And that's a horrible point of writing. Then the difference between, say, that and Luke Skywalker, and it's a very different scene. There's nobody chasing Luke or whatever. He makes the decision to follow Obi-Wan. He wants the adventure. He wants all that. He actually makes a decision. I'm going to follow Obi-Wan to do this. Now, he could have said, no, I want to stay on the farm. No harm, no foul. But he actually makes a choice. Rey, oh, well, you know, I'm being chased. I might as well do this. It's very, very bad writing. And that's where I always find that when you have stories, you have to make the character make a choice to go on that adventure, to do that thing. And if you don't, and they just go with the flow of it, it's what's the point? Because it could just happen to anybody type thing. So hence why there's a decision. And the panel is actually a decision panel there. It's very subtle, but actually, to be fair, it's actually very overt. Not subtle when one side's all black and one side's all light. But there's a decision made there. And you can kind of see, up to this point, she hasn't made any decisions. At this point, she's just been shuffled into the orphanage. She's just been shuffled to do stuff. This is her Celia's first decision in the whole story.
Which again, we are about 3 pages in, I believe. So already we have this character arc of we had to show the struggle that she went through. We had to show that she's decided something. Let's talk real quick about the colors themselves because you have the two caretakers, one in purple, one in pink, and then you have Celia. She has her colors to make her stand out as a main character compared to the off-white characters here, clearly. But the pink and the purple, is there a reason for those two choices?
That one, not really.
Oh,
It's not really. I wanted them to dress to be the colors to match. So the pink and the purples, they match.
Okay.
Don't get me to color theory. That's a whole. We could be here for another 2 hours.
We could. No, I wanted to find out
I
because I was
know,
like, well,
but pink,
it was sticking out to me. I said, I wonder if this
pink
is
and
really
purple are
important.
complementary. And I also
Okay.
want, and the other thing is pink also pops, as you probably can realize. And the reason I wanted that pink is because she gets used for one of the characters gets used further down, and color is very easy to go. Oh, she's the lady in pink. I
That's the
remember
one.
the
Yeah.
lady in pink.
Yeah. All
It's
right.
one of those. It wasn't a. The other thing is you don't want reds because red's danger. It could have been a blue. It could have been a green, but it was.
I
pink.
love that because I really do. I try to point out the colors all the time, and you already pointing it out. I was like, oh, he does care. Okay. Okay to move on to the next 2 pages?
Yeah, sure.
Let's see what happens here.
So she stands up to the bullies in the previous page, as you know, and of course, and the whole thing about standing up to bullies and is sometimes it doesn't always work the way you want it to work. So she's now facing the consequences of her action. So she's being chased down, and the one thing I did want to say about the scene and why it kind of a little bit ends abruptly is in volume 1. This is how the protagonist. So you have Victoria. She's meets Celia for the first time. So the Wordsmith, she's the lady in the green jacket. She actually meets Celia for the first time, and this page is actually recreates that first meeting from a different perspective. So in the first time, you see Victoria sees Celia being bullied, and she comes to, and Sparky, the little drag, comes to help. But this is actually reversed, that you see it from Celia's perspective, how the events led up to this. So it's a little bit of a twist. So the whole point would be is if you read this from volume 1, you go, I remember this. But if you haven't read it, you'll see for the first time how these 2 characters met.
Being able to write a scene from another person's perspective later in a series of comics is such a dream for me to be able to go, oh, I cared so much and I got to this point to show off other perspectives and make that scene mean different things. I bet that feels incredible.
Oh, it does.
The next question though I have here is on, this is the first time I'm seeing a page turn. The other ones that was a little more talking, a little slower feeling. Now there might have been page turn through words themselves. How often do you try to put page turns in your comics?
I do my best to put them in all the time, but the trick would be is because this is a graphic novel, the page turns is slightly different. My page turns are on even pages, not odd pages, because I usually have a banner page.
Oh,
so if you do you mind jumping back to a little bit, and I'll show you what I
can
mean.
try. It is a little harder for me. Let's go back. There we go.
Okay, so the page turn would be that decision meeting.
Oh,
page,
I'm so sorry. I when I put this together, I was trying to do the page turns right. So I think this is how it's supposed to go. So that's my fault. So our first ones are the page turns.
Correct.
Okay.
So, wait, no. Sorry, I'm getting things. You got the prologue. Oh no, so you're absolutely right. The page turn is on the right-hand side. So I do my best to put page turns in. Like you can kind of see in this way. Yeah, sorry. Wait, no. Sorry, my math is all wrong. I knew that was a reason why. Did I mess this up so majorly?
No.
My mistake. The page turn is on the left-hand side page.
Okay.
Bottom right, so you can see the face. I'm not going to let these 2 pick on me anymore.
So that's a good page turn. That makes more sense. That was a page turn.
Because if you remember, there's actually a banner page I put 1 year later. That's the page 1. So then you got the page 2 behind. So I got it right. That face where she's staring to the reader, that page is the page turn.
That makes more sense. I'm so sorry. That was my fault when I was putting this together because I was trying to piece it for 2 pages a page.
Yeah. So it's slightly different because, but if you also go, because there are banner pages, if you scroll across, I actually have, oh man, we're getting into bookbinding things. You've got,
I love bookbinding.
If you have a banner page in the front, and then you have page 1, page 2, you can't have a banner page fall on an even page because then it looks really weird. the banner page always has to be on its own separate page. So when you're doing almost each chapter needs to have, like for example, this page needs to be on an odd page.
Okay.
So imagine if this page is on an odd page, when you flip across, you see this behind the page. So this page on the right is not a page turn page, because the page turn is on prologue. Imagine if that's the first thing you see in the chapter. So you flip it.
Perfect.
And so then you have to kind of balance the pages. So that's where I put sometimes sketches or artwork or something, so that you balance up the pages through. So
that makes more sense. So our page turn was actually this giant scene
this
here.
giant page is the page turn.
We
and
moved
then
on with this. Okay,
one,
that makes more sense.
It's a page turn. And if you scroll across one more,
our page turn is the dragon showing up.
It's a page. And then the epic. And this is where it's tricky, because being on having banner pages, like the chapter pages, the page on the right is also a page turn. Because it opens up to a new chapter.
All right, so let's go ahead and remove one more. So there's the new chapter. It should go like that.
So the other page is almost a de facto page turn, because although it's on the left-hand side, if you imagine the page, you see the chapter, you go, oh man, that page ended so well. I've hit this banner page with, it's like family. Do I now open the next page? So it's a de facto. So the last two pages are both page turns. So
that's chef's kiss right there. Because when I saw it, I said, well, this is a page turn for sure. And then pointing that out, you corrected everything. And it goes, no, I do see both of those pages as page turns. That was fantastic.
So it's a bit cheeky, you have to admit, but it goes back into actually the page turn only works with with physical books. You can't do it digital. Yeah,
absolutely. So not to take us off on a whole different tangent, but we are going to binding books and the tricks that we have to learn when binding books, and things that we can and cannot do, such as double splash pages just wherever we want in a book. What kind of tricks do you think are really important to know for that?
Well, banner pages like I do, like the big family pages where it takes a whole page, those always need to be on an odd page. You cannot have a banner page on an even page, because it just looks horrible. You want that break, and then you flip to the artwork. So it has to be on an odd page. Banner pages then muck up the whole, not muck up, but you've got to be a lot more cognizant about how your page turn work with banner pages, because the page on the right, for example, here is no longer a banner page. I mean, no longer a page turn. The other thing is with banner pages, it actually gives you natural breaks to the story. Like you saw the first one, 1 year later, when people hit this, they more automatically assume this happens in the now. So you can time jump, and it makes your life a lot easier. You don't always have to put captions up the top to go, this is 1 year later, or this is whatever, or this is a different place. Because when you put a banner page in, you jump, you see totally different characters doing totally different things. You can more or less assume they're not related. Which is
You're about to sell me on banner pages. I'm about to be sold, and every book's gonna have banner pages now. This is great. This was another book I wrote, which was called Moon Goddess. And the reason why the banner pages was so much fun is I got to basically break the book into 4 parts, which is the full cycle. Actually, the moon has about 10 different cycles, but we won't get too much. But we only care about the 4.
The 4, the full moon, half moon, crescent moon, and no moon. You know what I mean? So I broke the story into those 4 components, where the banners actually broke up the story into those 4 parts, and it lets you do a lot more complex storytelling. Because I'll send you Moon Goddess if you really. I hope you read it, because when you could do stuff like that, I actually had the story running. The one thing I do love doing is writing stories in parallel. So, the A, the B stories. I always have an A and a B story running. It makes it so much easier when you have A and a B story running in different timelines. Having banners to actually split those A, B stories into its different parts. Hence why the first part is 1 year ago, and this one is now.
See, again, this high level stuff we're talking about. This is the stuff that you don't get. Your mic just lost
Oh,
real quick.
so it's for a kids book, by the way, and the whole point is you want to make it that it's so obvious without having to go, hey kids, this happens at this point and this happens at this point. Like, for example, like showing the seasons, like autumn and winter. You don't have to write, and she had a horrible winter, and now it's 1 year. You don't have to write that. Just show the bits and understand that they can trust them to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole trick with a lot of these things.
We're going to rein this back in. We're going to come back in. We're going to look at our pages again, and we're going to discuss color, green and purple. Any specific reason for this?
It had to be different, had to pop. Color choices a little bit difficult.
I've lost you on the mic.
Usually these planes, these type of planes, usually you associate them with red, the Red Baron, Snoopy, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted no association with that. I couldn't have the hot colors, so the reds, because they're not fighting. They're not fighting planes. So color choices had to be a lot softer. And if again, not getting too much into color theory, you couldn't have the bright yellows, the oranges, the reds, all those were out. I didn't want it to seem like it was scary, so the dark blues, the blacks were all out. And it kind of then defaults it to, you know what, we don't want blue, the light blues, because it contrasts us with the sky. So you kind of like process of elimination, you're down to the greens and the purples. And that's kind of what we went with. And you didn't want the browns as well, because they're wearing browns.
Which is fine. The green and the purple, because it does kind of feel like an all ages. Like when I see this, I go, oh, I could give this to my kids, no problem. Don't have to worry about what's going to happen next. So I do think that actually plays into your favor for that. The dialogue itself, this is an interesting point to show. We have an upside down character. The balloon, is it upside down? Is it right side up? How did you handle that?
No, it's just right side up. Look, just on say a bit of lettering theory, even if you're doing something like spinning and all the rest of it, you can adjust the balloons a little bit left, a little bit right, but you can't have it fully adjusted like 90 degrees, even though it's in context of the story, mainly because it becomes that physical thing. Like, you don't want people turning the book. It takes the reader right out of it if they have to turn the book, physically to read. So a lot of times where I'll go, you know what, I could have a lot of fun to move the dialogue. It's sometimes you just have to keep it very static. That's just
understood. We're going to move forward just a little bit then and see what happens next. Now, again, page 1 on here will be our page turn. Everyone remember that. Go ahead and let me know what you were doing on these pages.
So it's the big introduction to the characters, and it's always nice to have that, the big panels. And I like it to have big. That's almost a splash page. I love big pages where sometimes there's no action required. You know what I mean? And it's just introducing the character. Now, in context of the story, the reader has met the guy on the left before. He was actually he turned out to be a little bit of a bad guy. But again, if you're new to the series, you haven't read it. But the reader has never actually met the person on the right. This is the first time the reader has read the person on the right, and you don't know how she fits into the story. So you get this huge splash page, and it's always that she asks us the question, "Where's the bee tree?" And the bee tree is another character. He's one of the main characters. So you know straight away she's tied to the bee tree. And you're trying to figure out who she is and how it's all linked up. And this is actually something that happened in the past as well. It doesn't get explained yet. You will see it as it gets explained through. But the reader's actually slightly confused at all this point, because who is this? Why is this guy, the evil guy, hanging out with her? And why does he not seem evil and all the rest of it? It's a little bit confusing to an existing reader, and to a new reader, they're going, who are all these characters? And you get this big splash, where you're going, this is a really cool new character, and they're excited to read more about her. And
absolutely,
I have to, I know we've been through this one. I love the dialogue for the next couple of pages, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to show that the guy on the left, he really likes the character on the right, and he's trying to suss her out to say, "Hey, do you like me?" But nobody actually says, "Hey, do you like me?" He's
Hmm.
just trying to dig through it, and whether she's intentionally misreading him or she's just totally oblivious, I'll leave that to the reader to figure out. Because the last thing, one thing I find a lot of writers do, which I absolutely dislike, is when they spell everything out for you. Now, I could have made it really clear here that she goes, "Oh, you're trying to hit on me. Please don't," or whatever, and make it very clear she knows what's happening. But it's actually much more subtle to go, does she know? Doesn't she know? Is she playing it this way? Is she playing it? Because that's how people really react. So,
Absolutely.
so if you ask me the question of, does she know that he likes her? I'm not going to answer that because I want you to read it and make your own decision. Because
So I remember.
it can be
Oh, go
read
ahead.
both ways. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. So yeah, that's the theme of the book, though, is it can be read both ways. And when it even plays into the way that you're structuring these conversations between these characters. I remember you sending me these pages and getting to read them. Now, do I remember exactly what was said? No, but I remember going, "Oh yeah, no, I understand what he's doing with the script. This is interesting." We're gonna move forward just a little bit more because I think this is the last two pages that I got to see from it.
Yeah.
Um, and what's happening here? Do you remember any specific lines of dialogue?
So it gets through it. And then, so the main thing would be is, again, and this is where there is a difference between a kid's book and an adult book. And this is
Mhm.
one very, very obvious difference. Uh, the page that goes wham, that page, you can't show gore. You can't show blood and all the rest of it. But it's enough to figure out, hey, what's happening just on that one page. Because
That's interesting. Keep going, I'm sorry.
yeah, and that's where you write for kids because uh, you can write for kids. By the way, if you read through the dialogue for the rest of the pages, um, I try to make the dialogue actually very complex. They're not using simple words. They are not obviously stating what they need to state. There's actually a lot of hidden agendas in both of what the two characters say.
Mhm.
But the one thing which you don't want to show kids, you don't want to show the anchor hitting her head or whatever. And this is where you can subtly go. Like one of the more interesting ones is say the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Leonardo has two katanas. He never stabs anybody in the entire cartoon series. Never ever. You got two blades. So very similarly, like if you want to write for kids, there are certain rules. This is one of the very hard rules. You can't show somebody being hit, you know, and blood and all the rest of it. It's totally avoided. Yeah.
What level of violence are you allowed to show? What toes the line for that? Because surely they're gonna punch each other, right? Something's gonna
Punching is fine.
happen.
And there
Okay.
is. The whole point would be is nothing, the usual, this is the usual. Again, like know the rules and then break the rules where
Mhm.
appropriate.
Yes.
So nothing permanent. So you're not talking about showing someone's broken arm, like,
Ah,
they, uh, uh, no implication of blood or, guts or gore or that type of thing. Um, Nothing that shows something like psychological torture or something. You know what I mean? Like
oh,
stabbing someone through the
okay.
eye. Even on a shadow scene, you don't want to show someone being stabbed through the eye and stuff like that. Certain things you just totally avoid. Uh, Most cases, if you write for a kids' book, you shouldn't be diving into those particular scenes anyway. So,
Of
hence
course.
why the big wham, black screen, you know what happened. Everybody is saying to her, if you can kind of see here, it all builds up. The watch out, move, 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 and then of course she doesn't move away in time. So you know what happens.
Absolutely. We're going to move forward just a little bit more. Now, again, the first page is our page turn, and the black is following that wham scene. So when you're looking at it normally, it would have the black, it would show up, and then he's waking up. I love when panels are black. I love when they do these sorts of things. What happened here?
Yeah, so he wakes up. So it kind of is very clear. Like it was the first few pages was a whole flashback sequence.
Mhm.
Now, and the one thing I do like about doing like flashback sequences where you don't tell them it's a flashback sequence. So they think it's still part of the story, and then you're going, oh wait, he was dreaming. He woke up and he's back to this. And you can now see I put the page turn here because there's a scene shift. See, this is where the page
Yes.
turns. So the next page is now the scene shift when it jumps into something else. And it goes, I only want that wordsmith. He's being ominous and something he's evil and he's the bad guy. He's trying to do something. And then you have the page turn here. So I know some people would argue the wham before should be the page turn, but I would be thinking that's actually all part of the action. You don't want a page turn as part of the action because people are going to read through the pages anyway. You want the page turn on a little bit of a cliffhanger suspense note where they
Mhm.
ask the question or something's going to happen. You don't want a page turn to end on where there is an action sequence. If you that's my take. You want it to end where it's a little bit more of a suspense sequence. So
Yes.
that's
Absolutely agree.
if you ask the question why I preempting a question, the wham isn't a page turn. The guy with the hood looking obviously saying I want that wordsmith, that's much more of a page turn than a wham. Because with the wham, you need to assume you're going to read the next page because it's exciting. You're going, oh, action,
Which
something's happening.
wanting the wordsmith, this is a good point to actually ask you what is a wordsmith and where did you decide to create this book? Where did the inspiration come from?
Okay. And a wordsmith is an artisan.
Mhm.
So on the right, the lady in the blue, she's a wordsmith. So, and you find out what they do is basically they create physical manifestation of words. So, for example, if she creates the word family for you and she gives you the word family, if you've had a happy childhood and your family, you have kids, they're all happy, and you open up the word family, it might bring you a lot of joy to open up that word family because you've got a lot of good things associated with the word family.
Mhm.
Now, if I give it to somebody who had a hard childhood, or they've been abandoned or whatever, they open up family, it makes them really sad because they just get to the point where they get reminded of what they don't have, or they just get reminded. Or the other thing could be is if didn't have a family, but they were brought up by friends who cared about them, they understand that, found family is more important than blood family. So the word family has already all these connotations, which I'm trying to link up really nicely. In the first one, the prologue, you hear about her um, losing her family. So Celia lost her dad, and she goes to the orphanage. So she has a different perspective on family. By the way, there's all these themes right through the book. And then you have these two friends who are like almost found family. Like she sacrificed her life to save him. She's kind of his found family. And as you go through, you see more uh, the family theme subtly is being portrayed in all these different respects. So we can keep going. But family, like I take a word and I make it the theme of the entire volume. That's how Wordsmith works. But in terms of the actual world, she creates this box or whatever, and if you open the box and you see the word, whatever emotions are associated with that word, you will feel. That's how this world works.
I like that. I like that a lot, and that does again the strength of your themes so far for this book. Fantastic. Like just the idea. Again, you keep saying what does a word mean to people and how does it mean different things to people, and then you're pointing out it's a family that's blood, it's a family that's adopted, and it's great. This is really strong writing. We're gonna move forward, is that
Yeah,
okay? Or
yeah,
okay,
sure,
let's
of
see
course.
what happens next then. She threw a box, the word is dream. Now again, I can't read these words, but I can look at these pages and go, I see what's happening already. um, is this his imagination? Is this what he feels when he sees the word dream? What's happening here?
Okay, so he sees the word dream and he smiles because he has dreams that are important to him. And if you read the bottom panel on the right, he he goes, well, kind of been my dream to always enjoy a lovely day with a lovely lady.
Mm,
So it's this one's a bit more overt, I have to admit. But
sure.
because what happens is you can kind of see if you read through the dialogue by putting it in this special box, the power of the word is amplified.
Mhm.
So it's kind of hinted that he wanted to ask this particular lady out for a long time. But when the dream finally hits him, he goes, you know what? I will follow my dream. And he goes, you know what? Would you like to go out for a walk? You know what I mean? And you can kind of see here. And this is actually the first time he actually kind of makes a move on her because of the word dream. So he's thinking, you know what? I will try to follow it. So, and that's the little bit the subtlety behind how the words work. Now,
I like that. Keep going. I'm sorry.
you'll find out later on that the words can be used in a bad way. For example, you could use the word, and the evil word that's being used throughout the series is the word fear, because they're trying to weaponize the word fear. So that's one of the
With
key. Yeah,
Well, you say that it could be used for nefarious means, and then we actually have this
yeah,
next page, which I believe is showing us such a thing. But I have a question about the paneling itself.
yeah.
I've never seen a page like this. The Normally you want to maximize all the space you possibly can. You want to try to put as much as possible. You have two very similar panels. You have them a little crooked from each other, and then everything else is white. Did you decide to do this? Was this an artist decision? What went into your thought process for
Oh
this?
no, artist did a fantastic job, 100%. I writer's decision for this one. It's you see her leave the room,
Mhm.
and you just it's always fun. And I don't do this that often, by the way. I There are certain writers, and I'll drop the name. Tom King, for example, he does this so much. If you read any of Tom King's work, he loves doing this where you have like 4 or 5 panels where they're all identical except for one element.
Mhm.
I think that's overkill. But I think the effect of it can be useful. Like it's the whole thing is um Zack Snyder, stop using slow-mo. Come on, man. Like once in a while it is cool and it's epic and it's awesome. If it's every like the whole I'll dunk on Zack Snyder a bit. There's a scene in Batman versus Superman where Lois Lane is getting her coffee and he slow-mos that scene.
That's
Lois
important,
Lane
yeah.
it, she's reaching for coffee and it's slow-mos and you're just going, Zach, I love you, man. You're my man, power to Zach and all the rest of it. But dude, she's getting a cup of coffee. You gotta cut it back to that slow-mo stuff. So the whole point would be it's if you have effects that you can use and it fits, 100% use it. And in this case, I think it's really subtle because she's left and you try to show something nefarious is happening. And that's not a page turn, by the way. So the page on the right is not a page turn. If you go to the
Mhm.
next page,
Let's go to the next page and see what happens. The page turn is another smaller panel. We get to see
yeah,
the character. Go ahead.
and then he goes, what is this? And that's the thing where he finds out something is, and the whole point about having a lot of white space around some of these things is you're actually almost building up the suspense. It's
Mhm.
like there's everything else is not there, and you're just hyper focused on these panels. That's the reason why you could pick. There's a shadow in that background. I'll give you an example. Let's say if we made these 6 panels and I put 2 more panels in there, and I put those 2 previous page panels as smaller panels at the top, you might actually miss that shadow that pops up if this
Mhm.
was a much more busier page. Now, if the previous page not being busy, you're not so hyper focused. That shadow there is so obvious to the reader.
Yes.
And so there's times where you hyper focus a panel or hyper focus a scene to show certain things. And again, this also leads up that this is now the page turn where he's going, what is this? The whole usual. Ask the question and don't answer it. Make the page
So
turn.
to talk real quick about the writing style and the things that you're doing, to talk about the suspense, you do that as well with your bubbles, with the way that you letter things. We've talked about
Yep,
this in the past. When it's a cramped space, we do tighter bubbles to the characters, things like that.
yep,
But this writing that I'm reading, the way I'm seeing this is it feels like every 4 pages or 5 pages is almost its own condensed story. And then we end on an action note and we move to a new character, and then we end on a suspense note and we move to another character. And I think that's interesting because I feel like I'm reading full stories almost. Is that how you mean to write, or is there a certain style that you aim for when you're writing these books?
Look, I write differently for different stories, but this one having a huge cast and each one having their own agency,
Mhm.
it's it has to kind of be done in that little small pockets. But the one thing I do like is where I manage to tie everything all together, and that's actually the subtle thing where you're trying to tie the A, the B, the C, and all these stories together all into one. And it does all tie up. So every plot, there are certain plot points which I leave for the next volume, but anything related to the word family, I tie up in this particular volume.
Interesting. Okay, fantastic. And to let everyone know, we are only reading, I think, about half the book
Yep.
right now. We're going to have to end it a little early on that, but let's move to our next page. This is starting an entirely new story. Who is
Yep.
this person that we're meeting here?
So you're meeting Victoria. So the
Mhm.
girl with the red scarf, it's she's the main character of the thing. She's the wordsmith of the story.
Mhm.
And you can kind of see here that she's welcoming people to her house. And you'll see Celia here as well. So this is Celia 1 year later after they've met up and they become friends. And it's kind of implied as well that if you read previous volumes, you actually see how the friendship develops. But if you just see it here, you can kind of figure out and the things you don't need and things if you're just reading the story by itself, it's very obvious that she gets Victoria and Sparky the little dragon save Celia from the bullies. So it's not a big stretch to see her here as Victoria's
Mhm.
friend. You
I'm
don't
gonna
have
move
to
us a
explain it.
little bit more. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is not the fun sequence. So she promises them a whole bunch of treats, and when she opens up her box, she finds out, oh my god, I forgot, I ate them already. So it's a bit of fun. The characters interact with each other. She's saying to Mei Li, the girl in the green, hey, look, you settled in, and I'll go get more treats. So it's a bit of fun. Most of these are character pieces, so you get to see the characters, you get to see what they enjoy, their personalities. You find that Victoria is a little bit more forgetful, a bit more impulsive. And if as just we go to the next page if you like. Unless
Well,
you have
real
a
quick,
question on this.
I'm gonna ask one quick question because I noticed the scarf at the start of our prologue. The scarf seemed to be important. Now, one scarf has horizontal patterns, the other has vertical patterns. Is there a purpose for these scarves that they're wearing?
So the scarf actually it links back. So what happens is Victoria's scarf, you have to read volume 3 to find out because
Okay.
she doesn't have a scarf. It was actually from her parents,
Okay.
and the purple scarf was actually given by Celia's dad. So there are certain significance to the scarves. It's not a huge thing, but it does drive a bit of the character's motivations. You find out a bit more.
Absolutely. And that's again, when I'm reading these comics with people, I like to try and pay attention to what's happening on the scene to ask what feels important that the writer put down. And that was one of those things. Immediately I said, "Oh, there's a reason for this." And you explained that I should have read the rest of it. Oh, that
No,
makes more
but the point
sense.
is, if you didn't read the rest of it, it still all makes sense.
Of course, but it adds extra to it. So I could read it and go, "Oh, I remember this. This is a sweet thing." I absolutely understand. That's fantastic. What is our next page?
So she goes in, she buys um, some sweets, and then they leave, and then they find out, the orphanage is nearby. We should just drop in to say hi. Ties back
Mhm.
into the prologue, and then you see somebody enters the sweet shop, and it goes, George, what you if you're a brand new reader, you're going, oh my God, what's happening here? Who's George? What's happening here? But what you find out is that if you read previous volumes, you found out that George is actually her estranged husband, and he's returned. Now, this one is one of those things where, uh, especially when you're writing a long running series, this is volume 5 already,
Mhm.
is sometimes you have plot threads which you've dropped a couple of volumes back, and you just have to keep the thread running a little bit. It does may or may not impact the whole main story, but you have to keep it running a bit because there is a payoff on this particular plot track. It doesn't pay off in this volume, but it will pay off down the track.
Absolutely. Writing, I'm going to ask just a quick question. When you're writing dialogue, sometimes I've read books that have very sparse dialogue. This book is dialogue heavy from what I've seen so far. Do you have any opinions on how much a character should say?
I would say they need to say as much as they need to say. Now, if you actually
Mhm.
read the dialogue itself, it's very, very easy to read. It's not technical dialogue. It's not expositional. It's actually very free flowing dialogue. So if I say read the first panel, which looks first panel on the left hand side page, it's
Mhm.
Victoria Sparky. I'll give you actually an explanation for the first panel as well, and I'll give you an explanation for the first panel for a mistake a lot of writers make as well. So he goes, Victoria, Sparky, so good to see you both. Who's your new friend? Bonnie. This is Celia. Celia, Bonnie. Hello, ma'am. Nice to meet you. Please. And then she gets cut off where Victoria's looking at food, stuff like that.
Mhm.
One thing writers get done, and it's done, I would say it's almost universal, and I freely admit I'm guilty of it as well, is they don't use their characters' names. It is so important that you keep saying the character's name. It until the point where it sounds unnatural. You have to
Yes.
use it. Give you the whole point of James Bond and John Wick. If you want to know how to use a character's name, watch those two movies. Mr. Wick, John Wick, Bond, James Bond. Who are you? James. The whole point about it is, and again, it's not natural. Like, again, we've had these two conversations we've had for the last hour or so. We haven't said each other's names. That's totally cool because we know each
Yes.
other, and our names are actually nicely written at the bottom, this way, this side.
Yes.
There it is. It's not, but when you're telling a story, you have to shove the name in. So you have to keep repeating it. The usual standard for me is you have to repeat a particular person's name 5 times for each character throughout the entire thing. Otherwise, the reader will forget the name. Now, it's different for a novel because in a novel, let's say Harry Potter, they'll go, Harry did this, Harry said this. So the name gets automatically repeated ad nauseum.
Mhm.
So the reader knows who the characters are. In movies, TVs, or whatever, you have to specifically put the name in. Now, it does make it sound a little bit unnatural, but the reader will thank you for it. It's one of those things you have to do. And I've lettered books where I've gone back to the writer and goes, you didn't say the main character's name once at all throughout the entire 40 pages. He goes, didn't I? No, you didn't. I know it because I read the script, because the script says, and James Bond jumped here, James Bond shot this guy, James Bond. But nobody actually calls him by his name. So a lot of it is the writing, although you say it looks like it's dense. It's not that dense because a lot of it is saying people's names and repeating and setting up scenes and establishment. Like, for example, the first scene of this is the establishing scene. You know where they are, and you know
Mhm.
who characters are, and you know all their names, which is
Absolutely.
exactly what you want to do.
And
So,
one of my first scripts, I had that exact same problem. I sent it to someone. They said, I have no idea who anyone is. They said you used the name 3 times at the start and you stopped using it after that. Names are important. Saying the names are important. I have repeated that advice you gave me
yeah,
since forever now.
yeah.
It is the best piece of advice.
You can see in the bottom, she says the name George. Now you know, in these 2 pages, you now have everybody's name.
Everybody's name right there.
There
It
you go.
should be with the, it's absolutely establish the
And
names, establish the scene.
it's a bit unusual. I have to admit, it's a bit unnatural when you're writing it, except
Hmm.
when it's done. Once it's done, it's totally natural. But a
Absolutely.
lot of people just so key writing things. Use their names, please. Use their
Use the
names.
names or move forward. Oh, actually, is this the last page? The last 2
Yes, it is.
pages?
Yes,
Oh
it
my
is.
gosh. Okay, what happens here? Tell me.
So they go back to the orphanage, and this is the huge thing. So they go back to the orphanage. They find out Celia's doing well. She's now, you can kind of see here, she's a little bit expositional. She wants to become a pilot. You find out she says, "Oh, that's so exciting," and all the rest of it. And then the mysterious letter drops, because it fits
Mhm.
down. And then you find out that she has more family. She has an uncle. And then,
Oh.
so that's where it kind of ends up that she has missing family. So the whole time throughout, it makes more sense if you, again, it reinforces if you've read other volumes that she wishes she had more of a family. And she now finds out she actually has more family. And this is the logical midpoint. But then the
Mhm.
other part is basically, as you probably can imagine, she's trying to find this family that she thinks she's lost.
Fantastic. Okay, that was great. That was a lot of fun. Um, so that is the book, Wordsmith. I have one last question for you
Yep.
before we wrap up. There are a lot of nuances, there are a lot of rules, there's a lot of technical know-how when it comes to making comics. You have years and years and years of experience in this know-how. What is the most fundamental thing that everyone should work on? What is the one fundamental we should all have?
It depends on what level you're coming in at. If you're brand new, absolutely, like this is my first comic, I just want to make something, I would just say, just do it. Like but the hardest thing for me to do when I did this was procrastination. Um, you've everybody's got that story in their head. It took me 10 years to finish that story, the first story. Not
Mhm.
because it actually did take me that long. It was just the story always sounds a lot better in your head than it does on paper. But
Absolutely.
once I decided, you know what, stuff this, I'm actually going to do it. When that point in your decision makes, I'm actually going to do it. The writing took me about 2 weeks to write my first story, which was Romeo and Juliet with cats. If if you, I'll send it to you if you want. But that was
Okay.
my first story,
Okay.
Romeo and Juliet with cats, because why not, right? But that took me about 2 weeks, and then when I finished it, it was like the first thing was like, why the hell did it take me 10 years to do this? You know what I mean? I should have just done it.
She's
And
just
so
done.
if you're a new writer, from that standpoint, is just do it. Like just write it. And I have to admit, my first script was total rubbish, utter rubbish. Like it was, it's cringe. It was horrible, and all the rest of it. Doesn't matter because you need to start that way. If you're newer, I would always say there's do a lot of reading. Like the best way to learn is to read other stuff and go, I like that.
Yes.
Or and like what you're doing, Chris, is to try to think about why they did. Always assume the writer had a reason for something, and then think in your head why they did something that way, and see whether it works for you, and then try to emulate. And so that's probably the second point. Like if uh, you're into it now, you're excited about, you've written a couple of scripts. But that point would be start to learn all the rules. And the rules are not hard and fast, but try to
Mhm.
understand why certain things are there. Like for example, the name one. The name one is something I'm very strict about whenever I read other people's scripts. It's like you gotta keep saying your names. You cannot have a script where the main character's names does not get said at least 4 to 5 times. Yeah, it just has to be done. And then the last point would be or just the most fun point, is once you understand the rules, learn how to break them. Because if you get a situation where you break the rules and it works, that the rule gets broken, then you know you've stepped up because you go, I understand the rules so well, I know why I need to break it in the sequence. And that's the final step. So I would say just do it, learn the rules, and then start breaking them. Once you get that,
Fantastic.
happy days, basically.
Fantastic. Mr. SK, where can people find you on the internet?
Look, if you go to Facebook, if you look under Sigmate Studio, Sigmate Studio, you'll find me on Facebook too. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Singapore, or the UK, my books are in every public library. So just look up Wordsmith in public libraries. You will find it. You should be able to find it there. If you don't, ask them to buy the book for the collection. I'm more than happy. Um, yeah, if you're in comic book stores, I work on various publications, mostly as a letterer. But if there's Moon Goddess by IPI Comics, if in most comic book stores do have it, um, I tend not to do many floppy periodicals. Most of my books are graphic novels. So libraries, bookstores, if you go to Amazon and stuff, you can find me anywhere. I'll give Chris some links if you want to check the description below later.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask Chris, give me the description below.
Absolutely. Check the description below. I promise we'll have it. All right. Well, thank you so much. And you have yourself a wonderful night, buddy.
Thanks.
Bait for the bait drill. Trash for the trash throw. Welcome to my emotional thunderdome. I am creative nothingness.